Good morning, Grow family. My name is Natalie Bishop, and I get to do the follow-up video with you on Mark chapter 8, verses 22 through 26. So let's go ahead and read that together. Jesus heals a blind man at Bethsaida. They came to Bethsaida, and some people brought a blind man and begged Jesus to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. When he had spit on the man's eyes and put his hands on him, Jesus asked, "Do you see anything?" He looked up and said, "I see people. They look like trees walking around." Once more, Jesus put his hands on the man's eyes. Then his eyes were opened, his sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Jesus sent him home, saying, "Don't even go into the village." If you've been journeying with us in Mark chapter 8, just a few verses before this, Jesus actually feeds thousands of people. And then he hears this inner dialogue happening between the disciples where they are kind of questioning and trying to understand a little bit more fully of who this Jesus is. And Jesus starts to realize that yes, he had opened up their eyes. They still don't fully understand who he is. And so then he even has to rebuke them. He tells them and compares their faith to that of the Pharisees and that of Herod, which is a little bit harsh. But then they walk into this scene where the people are bringing a blind man to Jesus. And they're on the north shores of Galilee, right outside of the Seas of Galilee. And this blind man is brought to him. The people bring him knowing that Jesus is able and powerful enough and holds all authority to touch this blind man and to give him full healing. Because of all the different miracle accounts that Jesus has already done, we know that by one word spoken or by one touch, Jesus can provide full healing. But in this scene, we saw that Jesus spit on the man's eyes and he touched him. And then Jesus asks him this question. He asks him, "What do you see?" Which is kind of funny because we know that Jesus already knows the answer. He knows all things. He is God. He's all-knowing. And yet the blind man responds and he says, I can see people, sort of, they're walking around, they look like trees, they're a little bit blurry. Maybe, Jesus, you might want to try this again. But we have to understand, because we know that Jesus is able, because we've seen him do it countless times in the past, why doesn't he heal him the first time? Why does he touch him and only provide partial healing? I think that he's using this as an illustration for the disciples, and he's using it as an illustration for our lives today. That we once were walking in spiritual blindness, and that Jesus drew us to himself. He touched our eyes. He touched and opened up the eyes of our hearts to fully see him. And for the people, I love the faith of the people, that they recognized who Jesus was, that they brought this man to him in great faith, knowing that Jesus could touch him and give him full healing. And so for us, as we're following Jesus, as Jesus has opened up our eyes, who in your life is stuck in spiritual blindness? Who is someone that you need to bring along and introduce to Jesus? Who are you ushering into the presence of this Jesus who can touch their lives and restore them and give them sight to see who he is? And for us who are continuing on in this process of discipleship and following after Jesus, we know that he's going to continually touch our eyes. It says then he touched the blind man's eyes again, and he gave him full sight. He restored his sight completely. And as we're journeying along, we know that we're not going to fully see the whole picture until we meet our Maker face to face. And that we know that just like Jesus led the blind man out of the village by the hand, that God himself, that Jesus is carrying and holding our faith. And we have a great encouragement like this from Philippians 1:6, where Paul tells us that we are confident of this, that he who began a good work will see it through, or carry it through in some translations, to completion until the day we meet Jesus Christ face to face. That he is carrying our faith, that he will complete it until the day that we get to see him, where our sight will be restored fully and we will be made complete in him one day. But who are you bringing along with you? Who are you introducing to Jesus? Because I know that we all were stuck in our spiritual blindness, just like the disciples. And because he opened up our eyes, we get to have this faith that isn't dull. May we not have a dull faith. Who are you bringing along with you? And may we live this life of discipleship with a great faith, praying and hoping that he will continue to open our eyes to see him more fully.